Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to a brand new video. And it is that time of the year again where we now start to already think about next year's F1 game and getting ideas in early, because the way video games are developed, if we do these ideas way too late into the year's game cycle, it's too late to make any kind of change or suggestions to the developers. We need to start, suggesting them now. Actually, I've left it later and I've actually left it later this year than I did last. I think this time last year, I think I'd already done a video like this maybe 2-3 weeks ago in the cycle in the grand scheme of things. So we left a little bit later. I wanted to finish off season 2, get 2 whole seasons under my belt to really get an understanding of how F1 2020 my team is worked out and what I really want to see going into F1 2021. Now the added, excitement is that game will be on the next generation of consoles, the PS5 and the Xbox X series. So there's hopefully going to be more scope to maybe do bigger things with the F1 game. Let's all hope that we don't have a repeat of the calamity that was F1 2015 going on to a new generation of consoles. I think Cody's have hopefully learned their lessons from that transition, and they'll hit the ground running this time with that brand new game. But here are 8 things I want to see in F1 2021, specifically to do with my team career mode. Obviously, that's my entire, basis on the channel is I love career mode. That's what we do around here. So we might do other areas of the game potentially in other videos, but this will all just be about career mode and my team as well, if that carries over, I hope. So I'm going to start off with number 1 is a much better off-season management, and I talked about this in the pre-season video of season 3, but they definitely need to rearrange how that's all done with when you get the money in, when you sign your teammate, and just a bit of a better timeline essentially of how that off-season pans out, because it's very awkward that you have to save money first to get your teammate, and then you get your prize money, and you go into the loading screen for the next season, and you see your brand new teammate alongside you in the loading menu, and it's giving you the stats for the previous season that you didn't do that season with this new teammate of yours. It just doesn't really make any sense, and then it needs to be just a bit of a better timeline to allow us to spend money accordingly, give us the entirety of January and February just as blocked out free time to do various activities, try and give us time to do, contract negotiations with teammates, and other potentially parts of the HQ facilities, which I'll get to in another idea. I think there needs to be more in that kind of area. But yeah, just a much better management system there. Very much like Motorsport Manager. They've really got that nailed down the way they did it on that game with Play Sport games. The way the entire system worked is you finish off the season, you got the prize money, and then there were specific dates when your drivers were, out of contract. And that's another thing as well. Give us more specificity of like what the date is of our current driver, and just don't give us a set time every single time that we have to do renegotiations. Give us that flexibility of having, maybe one more week later or earlier than a previous year because we signed the contract date at a different point to the previous season. Number 2, and this will feed off from that, I said give us time to do more things with the HQs and our facilities and our money. Number 2 is going to be, I think they need to add in hiring staff for your team. So we hire a teammate, that is it. But again, take a leaf out of Motorsport Manager and hire staff that could improve your pit stop times potentially. Maybe even, when you have a crash in quali or practice, it takes a set number of minutes for you to have that issue fixed. And you also get random failures in qualifying and practice where, the fuel system doesn't work, and it's usually like, 5 minutes to fix it. Potentially, if you invested more in your staff, those times get reduced, or if you don't, those times will be extended, and it takes you further time. And also, maybe that could feed into reliability boost. If your staff are really good at upkeeping your engine and, analyzing it and whatnot and debriefing after the race, your reliability might have a little 5% boost on every engine part because you've developed your staff. But essentially giving us one more thing to spend money on, because at the moment, as I'll get to in a different point later on, the money side, once you get to a later portion in my team career mode, you essentially just have more money than you actually need. Like, there's actually a lot of free money floating about, apart from obviously saving up those $12 million whatnot for the big HQ upgrades. You just have a lot of this floating money, which could be cool if they actually pressurize you to constantly be signing staff and having to pay contracts for them, wages to maybe, your technical director, because, we're the kind of owner of the team, so maybe we have our own team principal that we need to sign, or we're the team principal, and like I said, you just have a technical director or overseer of the engine department, so you have to pay a salary to. So just giving us more of a headache in that department, which just means there's more gameplay to it. There's more things to actually do in between races. Number 3 is going to be a mirror of point number 2, but essentially the same thing, but just for the buildings, giving us more options of the HQ facility. Maybe breaking down the facilities from, specifically aero and chassis and whatnot. Maybe go even deeper and, allow us to have different facilities for brakes, suspension arms, rear wing, front wing, and specifically we have to upgrade those bits. And so in that kind of way, it gives you, again, more of a headache of where you're going to put your money. Specifically, you know, if you have a car that, you know, definitely needs better braking, and I was mining it a lot of the time. I'm still not used to the braking system completely on this game. Maybe you want to invest specifically into brakes, not just the overall chassis thing. And again, if each of those departments has a different cost, that again gives us more of an issue of managing our money and basically makes it a tougher time. Because unless you're like a completely new person to the F1 game and very new to any sort of management system games, you know, with Football Manager or, you know, Motor Manager or whatever, after a season, once you've sussed out how the systems work and, you know, you're kind of sussing out where you should really improve upon against the AI, it can get very easy of like, okay, I know exactly where I need to put my money. It's just a case of saving it up. Giving us more options means that we could potentially get it wrong. Like, we could invest in the wrong HQ, wrong part of the facility, and it means that we've, you know, obviously got that wrong and have to actually spend some more time and more money to rectify that and invest in the right area. Also, on top of that, Motorsport Manager did a really nice thing where they had also other parts that you could invest in on the HQ that had nothing to do with the performance of the car, but were kind of more kind of novel things like a helicopter pad or like a little test driving track to earn some extra money. So maybe give us little things like that where we're spending money to make some money, essentially. Like, you were spending on, you know, HQ tour guide facilities, or, you know, certain teams like Ferrari or whatnot, they might have like a museum next to their factory, so maybe we can invest in a museum for our cars, and in that way you'll earn a certain amount per week, and you can improve your money in a different way, not just via the sponsors you've signed, but also these extra revenue streams that you've spent money on the HQ. Number 4, now I really actually probably should have put... Number 4, now I probably actually should have put this as number 1, because this is a massive thing for me. I will be holding them accountable and making it a fuss of it if it's not something I see on the next game. There needs to be a much better livery editor. The livery editor on this year's game, look, it's great that we can change our livery. You know, I'll give it that. It's amazing that on this year's game we got this in any kind of way. You know, the fact that they're giving us a custom car, it's our own team. That's great, but always looking to improve. Obviously, that's what you want the game to go forward every single year. And if you look at other games, what their livery editors can do, you know, Forza, GT Sport especially. So next year, on the next gen consoles and platforms, and then on PC, of course, I just want to see a much better native livery editor. Like, it's fine for players like me on PC. I can mod the livery. But I'm thinking about many of you guys on PS4, on Xbox One, going on to a PS5 or an Xbox X Series. If there's not a livery editor that is anything like GT Sport, I'll be very, very disappointed at them. They need to make that step up. There's no excuse. Even with the podium pass stuff, just firm it, okay? I know you want to make some extra money in-game, but you need to give more customizability. There needs to be shape editing or logo creation. There might be some red tape involved, so maybe not logos, but just the shapes alone, just to make sure that people can have what they want. Like, if I want a specific color on the Halo compared to the chassis, let me choose that. Don't let the livery be predetermined. It's fine for this first year that you've launched it. I can accept that. It's the first time you've done it in my team. But now, second year into it, learn from the mistakes, and there just needs to be a much, much better livery editor. Number 5, and this is kind of a nice little join in, I guess, the previous point of, you know, choosing, you know, our car a bit more. I think it'd be really cool if they developed 4 different, or, you know, at least 3 different FOM chassis with just a few tweaks here and there. So maybe one that mimics a Mercedes kind of nose cone, one that mimics the Ferrari, and then one that mimics maybe the Renault, let's say, or the Red Bull style nose cone. And just basically all around the car, it takes inspiration from some of the different teams in F1, but it's still a generic car, of course, that they've designed with FOM and F1 engineers, but 3 or 4 different chassis that look a little bit different and might actually give you different base stats. So let's say the Mercedes car, if you choose that chassis versus the chassis that looks like the Ferrari, maybe the Ferrari chassis, it has maybe a little bit inherently more downforce maybe, or more drag, and compared to the Mercedes one that has less drags, more efficient maybe, so you have different foundational R&D points. So, you know, we had an interview with Will Buxton at the start of my team career mode, and due to our answers, that determined what upgrades we started with and what departments were best. Now, maybe what car style you choose, what FOM chassis style you choose, maybe determines if you start off with already one engine upgrade done, or one aero upgrade done, or one specifically, you know, like the drag updates are done on the aero side of things, because specifically you've chosen a certain chassis chassis that the game tells us this is a lower drag kind of package foundationally, it means that maybe later down the line you might hit a bottleneck because you've gone down that path. Remember back to McLaren, 2012 into 2013, they changed their philosophy of their car because they said they hit a bottleneck in their 2012 chassis. Let's have that with the F1 game. Let's have that with our cars. Like maybe we could hit a bottleneck of performance because of our certain choice we made way back at the start of the season on how the car was foundationally going to look, and then we build upon that, but we might reach the end of the tunnel and you might find it quite difficult towards the end of the season of trying to outperform and out-upgrade the other AI teams because they've gone a different way. They've got obviously their own F1, actual official F1 car. It's a very, very bold desire. That one I don't think will come in for next year, but I really hope that could be, like, I'm picturing in my head, like that would be a really cool thing to come in like a few years time and seeing different chassis styles, because I've said it before, this year the Renault has really grown on me as a chassis. Like the livery, it's the same as last year's, but the actual shape of the Renault car is really beautiful. It really is. So it'd be awesome to choose that style of like front end and just general car compared to the generic one, and every single year your car just looks the same. You could change the livery, yeah, but the actual car looks the same. It'd be cool to actually physically change the actual shape of the chassis year to year to give you that freshness and difference also year to year. Number 6. Now I know for sure this was also a part of this very video this time last year in the first video we did for F1 2020, because it's still something that's not in the game, and even more so than ever now, the fact that we can sign our own teammate and we're the team owner, there needs to be like some sort of team orders kind of, gameplay involved, or teammate interaction, whether it be comparing setups every single race weekend and maybe copying his setup or giving him my setup so the AI can use a player generated setup, and then team orders in the race, telling him pit now, and then you could have a back and forth maybe in the radio. Maybe Jeff tells you he's not gonna, if you tell him pit now, and then halfway through the lap Jeff comes back to us and says, yeah, just so you know, your teammate is not going to pit, he doesn't want to, so he's disobeyed your orders. And so that comes back to bite, your teammate or you after the race with a little cutscene and interaction maybe with your teammate. Just a way to control them a little bit more, but not completely. Like they're their own AI, so they have the ability to tell you no, they're going to do their own thing. But I feel like because we're now a team owner, it kind of makes sense to be able to tell him and ask him if he, wants to pit this lap. Like, I want to come in on the next one. Just come in here. Don't double stack with me. Like we've had that issue before for so many years now of teammates double stacking with us because there's no way to tell them that we're going to come in on this lap. So now as a team owner, there should definitely be a system where you can say, can you just pit on this next lap or X lap, as you could maybe say it into your microphone if you do use the voice control on F1. Number 7, again, this was a point that I had on this video last year, but a young driver test. But now that we've got F2 drivers in the game, in the driver market, how about just an F2 free agent driver test? End of the season, Abu Dhabi, like they have in real life. They have a young drivers test at Abu Dhabi, Yas Marina, just after the real life Grand Prix is done, the very next week. Maybe we could do that going into the winter before we decide who we want to sign. Maybe have just a free agent or F2 driver test where we can test out certain ones, because it might encourage the player to sign those F2 drivers. Because right now I think it's very, very, obviously everyone wants to get a really good driver as a teammate and go up against them, but to encourage maybe a bit more of an interesting way to play the game of signing an F2 driver and training them up, maybe have that test so you can see how their abilities stack up in your car specifically at the very end of the season. And finally, number 8, I think this should be a given that this is going to be part of the game, but the budget cap coming in for next year, I want to see that mechanic in the game. I want to see a budget cap in place for every team, so as a smaller team we can benefit because we've obviously got more to gain from spending up to the cap, but then the higher guys obviously have that cap cost. At the moment we don't know what the AI spend. There's no way to see what the HQ facilities are for any of the AI, what they spend, how much money they have, how much money they have coming in. It'd be cool to maybe see that, but just having that budget cap mechanism come in, as obviously I would hope they would have it, because it's going to be part of the real life sport, so you would kind of hope it's going to be there. But at the same time as well, maybe it would be maybe a little bit trickier to do this, but somehow working also the wind tunnel time kind of caps, because I believe how it's going to work for, I don't know if it's going to come in next year or maybe 2022 when the new regulations come in, but there's meant to be a wind tunnel kind of sliding scale cap, so that the best teams have less time to use in the actual physical wind tunnel, and the lower teams have more wind tunnel time. I think that's what they're saying about Ferrari, that Ferrari might actually have an advantage of being so bad this year because they'll have more wind tunnel time next year or 2022 to catch up essentially. But maybe having a mechanics somehow. I don't know how you'd work it into the aero side of things. Maybe, you know, just R&D point. Maybe all the R&D just costs more for the top teams, and you as a player team, as you get better season on season, you'll see the upgrades get more expensive as you do better. That actually, I'm just thinking about that now off the top of my head in this moment in time. That's actually a great idea, because that will also make the player's life harder and harder as you get through the seasons, which keeps it interesting. Because right now, if I have, you know, 10,000 R&D points, all the upgrades cost the same, so I can just rebuy them back if there's a regulation change. But it would make it so much more interesting if by season 4, because I've come second or first in the championship, the constructors, now, yeah, I might still have 10,000 points going into the new season and the regulation resets come in, but now all the upgrades cost way more than they used to, because I'm a much better team, so it makes it much harder for you and your AI kind of team counterparts around you who are placed P3, placed P4, and it'll bring everything a lot closer, as hopefully we hope it will do in real life. That's actually a very cool mechanic that I've just on the spot, I've actually really deeped it. I think that's a really sick idea. I really hope they bring that in or somehow work it into the R&D system. But those are the 8 different points I have off the bat here that I want to see in F1 2021 or just in future Formula 1 games on the next-gen platforms. If you guys like some of those ideas, then be sure to hit the like button. Let me know what you thought and your own ideas, any ones that I haven't mentioned and ones that you really think could be massively, you know, game-changing for the new consoles and the new platform on F1 2021. If you're new around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I've been aarava. Hope you guys enjoyed today. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.